Welcome to Istanbul. I hope you're all enjoying it. I know I'm enjoying it. I love Istanbul. This is a wonderful city. I was thinking what we're building is this kind of permissionless computing environment, not unlike a bazaar, right? It's like a digital bazaar. The bazaar used to be the place you would go to meet people you don't know and exchange things you don't have. And that's the big challenge that we have, right? Is how do we make a safe environment. So I actually pivoted on the talk I want to give. There's a little bit of a developer bent to it, so I'm going to try to reframe it for this very wide-ranging audience. I help build MetaMask, and the wallet is this kind of, it's the user's interaction with the rest of this, right? I kind of think an open-ended computing platform like Ethereum is good for making digital agreements. It's a place where we deploy things we want to express, automatically. And then we have to interact with those, and we have to make sense of those things. And that's a really weird thing to do. We're like asking a computer to apply judgment on our behalf so that we can collaborate better. And that's a tough thing to do. And it's a very tough thing to do in 5 to 7 minutes. So I'm actually going to be discussing different aspects of this over the course of the week. Right now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the current state of the art and the kind of challenges that we have within there and how I think they're kind of constraining the ways that we're able to collaborate and interact. So I'm just going to talk about a few things. I'm going to talk about the current interaction model we have, the current state of the art that we have, some properties we want from a better solution, and some approaches that I'm aware of for a better solution. And then I'll couple little bonus teasers. Okay, so I think you all know that when you interact with a smart contract today, usually a site will propose an action, and then the user and the wallet have to scrutinize it, and they have to say, oh, is this a good idea? Someone says, hey, I think you should jump off a bridge, and or I jump this way, right? And then you have to say, is that a bridge? You have to like make sense of the entire world every single time, and it's a lot of responsibility. And the site can do anything and potentially unreadable operations, and I think that that's kind of at the heart of a lot of the insecurity today. And then the wallet has to choose how hard to warn someone. And dApp developers want very minimal warning. And then users want the appropriate amount, but they, if they see too many, they'll start clicking through. And so there's this balancing act where we have to build a relationship with these computers where we trust them when they warn us, and that we can really believe that there's something trustworthy when they endorse it. So the current state of the art is not perfect, and it should be familiar to many of you. We've got phishing lists. We've got some people who contribute amazingly to phishing lists here. We've got transaction simulation is becoming a dominant mode that pretty much every wallet is implementing. The 4-byte directory is a classic. Have to shout out to it. And then we've got trying to comprehend what you're doing. All right, so phishing lists, they necessarily lag behind the phishers. So if we're looking for a perfectly secure solution, by necessity, we need something that's before the list, right? We need the curation of safety. We need a way to interpret or evaluate a party the first time we meet them. We need there to not be, a row of dead bodies in front of an alley for us to know to not go down it. And it's also hard to scale as fast and cheap. Right? Today we do some GitHub stuff. It does not scale as fast, especially when phishers have a zero cost to create new accounts. They spin up Sybils like nothing, and then we have to pay people to laboriously evaluate each one. And that's why, Twitter's totally overrun today. And Twitter's, paying for check marks is not going to solve that. The phishers are very happy to pay $8 for an endorsement. Simulation requires large centralized infrastructure. And if we accept that that is our solution, then I think that people are going to find that they don't have safety at the time they most need it. Usually the time you most need it is when you're being disenfranchised, you're being deprived of support systems, you're being censored. So I think that there are some real dangers to relying heavily on simulation. And it still requires knowledge of what you're interacting with. A simulation has to say what tokens are being transferred away. And it also has to do some pretty advanced anticipation. Sometimes you're granting an allowance. You're not losing anything now, you just might later. But these are challenges that simulation teams are working on. But that knowledge, what are the things you're interacting with, continues to be a problem for both phishing lists and simulation. 4-byte directory is part of this pattern where you trust a contract to describe what it does. It's currently prone to a variety of problems of its own. And then we can also recompile and try to show source code. I mean, that's not very user-friendly. And again, expensive centralized infrastructure. We want trustworthy identity of on-chain entities. We want to know names. We want well, maybe not home address, but we want to know who's accountable to this. We want to know it's who we think it is. And we want to have skepticism of self-declared names. And yes, this includes ENS names. If you see someone's ENS name as something, they picked that name for themselves, and we have to be skeptical when we see it. And I'm not just punching down at them for backing out of this Istanbul. Duplicate self-name resilience. So in a totally decentralized space, many people may call themselves the same thing. I call myself Dan. That should be fine. Someone else should be able to call themselves Dan. We don't have to fight for it. We don't have to bid each other for Dan.eth or whatever in order to be Dan, to our friends. And lastly, backwards compatibility is a hard problem. We want ways of knowing what we're interacting with, but we've got years of ecosystem built up that wasn't built with any of our best ideas that we come up with today. So we need a balance of new ideas and backwards compatible ideas. And also internationalization friendly, which kind of implies extensibility. You never know how many ways we might need to describe an interaction. You need more languages. You need more, not just languages. Some people may be more friendlier to visual versus auditory. And heck, with LLMs today, we've never had a better opportunity to custom tailor messaging to people. So I think there's some real opportunity there. Okay, here's a couple approaches that I'm aware of. And they're going to require community involvement, and that's why I'm giving a talk on it. This isn't something I can solve on my own. So kind of inviting people to scrutinize this and consider how we interact with untrusted things together. One is, do we trust contracts to describe what they do for themselves? You have to obviously say, as far as this thing says, this NFT says it's transferring. Now, if that's an NFT that you know and trust, it's actually kind of okay to say, well, this is its transfer function. But you just have to kind of security frame it, is what we say. There's a couple approaches to that. Site proposed interfaces, maybe the dApp can tell you what it thinks is happening. Again, we would then have to kind of give the caveat, as far as this site claims, that's what's going to happen. But at least when you're visiting a site, many times you at least have one interaction with a contract that is trustworthy. And so many of these approaches end up being a race to get credible information. So phishers want to trick you, but if you can get an accurate view of a contract first, then the first time a phisher lies to you, we could be able to tell you this is an inconsistent proposed. And then standardized interfaces, just things like the allowance method and the transfer method, methods that are so common that we can just render them faithfully. So contract-provided interfaces are interesting. There's a couple proposals out there. The problem is they're not backwards compatible, and they're not really extensible. The contract has to do all of the lifting. 719 is a cool idea, but it isn't specific enough. People need to start experimenting with this stuff, and they need to start trying it. And shout out to MetaMask Snaps, because now you can kind of just try one of these. If you have an idea, like this is a better way to represent transactions, you can now ship your own prototype idea, and we can then start popularizing it on the fly. You no longer have to get every wallet developer to agree before you can try something new. This is one of the critical things that MetaMask Snaps is designed for. A NatSpec is another one where you can have comments in your code that then would be shown to the user. But for the user to see those comments, they have to now have a compiler on the back end that has to have an accurate access to your source code and then recompile it. Again, huge centralized infrastructure. The average person isn't going to have this when they most need it. Site proposed interfaces, I've got an ERC kind of in the works there if you want to learn more about it. Again, a snap would be great for prototyping it. Standardized interfaces, it has this tricky quality where we'd like to represent all things that would ever be dangerous to you, but it depends on contract developers having the discipline to stop writing new authority transferring code. And so far, we've not seen this at all. We've got one way to transfer NFTs, and then somebody ships some new custom NFT with some hard-to-read way that lets you send it away. And phishers love that. When you write a new method that lets somebody transfer their NFT conveniently, you've now given phishers a way to deceive people more effectively. So if we want to rely on standardized interfaces, we have to be very disciplined about the ways that we let our users transfer things. So that would be that approach. Yeah, and also, of course, there's a process of transitioning to these where we can start to adopt these new patterns, but then we have to start discouraging the old patterns, and that's going to be tricky and painful. And by the way, since I'm probably coming to the end of my time, a couple other approaches will be inverting the entire relationship with the site. What would that mean? We'll come to the UXN conference on Thursday, and I'll be discussing that. I'll probably be posting the video. Maybe a paradigm that can disrupt the emerging AI monopoly, new composition primitives besides just the JSON RPC. I'll be talking about that on Thursday night at Builder Night. And maybe then really kind of just getting out there, how can AI help us negotiate new interactions between each other? That is a fun topic. I don't have any perfect solutions there, but Wallet Unconf, great place to just toss around the shit, right? So thanks. That's what I've got for this morning. Welcome. I hope you enjoy your time at DevConnect, and I hope we all make a better ecosystem together.